Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Kyle Juice Machalski, Quentin Q. Crisco, and the one and only Ron Luce, bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
And welcome back, Bears fans. We have real football. The Chicago Bears have started their mandatory mini camp. Full attendance. Every player on the roster was in the house today. I'm joined, as always, by Ron Luce. How you doing, Ron?
Q, I'm good. It's good to see full participation in minicamp. You see all the reports around the league about certain players not showing up, i.e. Brandon Aiyuk out in San Francisco. It's good to see a fully charged roster in the building at Halas Hall. And like you said, some real football, really. I mean, for truly the first time all offseason where we get to see all these guys out at Halas Hall together. So I'm doing well, man. Football season is inching closer by the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It is exciting. It is. I mean, I know you love the Cubs. Like you do the Cubs on tap. I loved the Cubs at one point in my life. But ever since I started podcasting and writing about the Chicago Bears, you know, as a side gig, whatever you want to call it, I just haven't had time for any other sports. It's like football is all I see anymore, and I can't wait for it. I'm so ready for it to be here. But we have some graphics here. Let me get them pulled up for those of you watching. For those of you listening, as always, we'll do our best to describe what we're talking through to make sure you're getting the gist of it. But this first one, just the Bears offseason schedule. So mandatory minicamp started today, runs through Thursday, June 4th through June 6th. And Ron, what do you imagine happens at mandatory minicamp?
I mean, mandatory minicamp is really just the first time that you get to see all the veterans working with the rookies. I mean, that's really all it's for. There really isn't a whole lot of padded exercises going on. If you saw any highlights today from day one, it was largely just not even shoulder pads, really just helmets is a lot of the work. It's more cerebral. It's what it's designed to be. Again, it's just the first chance that you get to see the entire unit, both offensively and defensively working together, both with the rookies as well as the skill players, or as part of me as the veterans.
And quickly, we get to some of these comments here. Some of our friends in the comments, Brewhaw7, bear down. And what is the
bear
word?
Down and crack them? Bear down worldwide and crack them?
Yeah, I like it. Bear down worldwide and crack them. And then
I like it too.
Friend Skokes, dudes, as always. And then, so yeah, to that point, I think this year mandatory minicamp, like it would be a pretty big issue if a guy like Keenan Allen or DJ Moore wasn't there when you got a rookie quarterback who's going to be starting from day one. This is, where it starts, right?
100%. Yeah. And again, good to see that full attendance. All these receivers are getting their work in with Caleb Williams. That the running backs are getting their work in, the offensive line's getting their work in. The only two notable, quote unquote, we'll call them absences, I guess, is Montez Sweat and Nate Davis didn't participate in a few of the drills. But nonetheless, they're there and they're present, and it sounds like everything's going to go well moving forward. So just a little bit of a slower ramp up period for those two guys. But I agree with you, Q. It'd be a big issue if a guy like DJ Moore or a guy like Keenan Allen wasn't present with having, your number one overall draft pick and rookie quarterback in the building.
To me, too, mandatory minicamp always feels to me like it's a big part of it is really just, hey, let's get you in the building and get you jumping on that scale and see how much you're weighing in at right now. So they can
100%.
Be like, hey, that's going to be hard to lose that much weight if you're still this heavy in August. Like, it's, I always feel like there's that factor in there as well. And we got Skokes in the comments saying the only thing that makes him cringe a little bit is hearing that Caleb held the ball too long, even during 7-on-7s. Practice is practice, though. And let's talk about that a little bit because, obviously none of us were there. None of us saw it, but we can rely on the beat reporters who were there to give us, if we're being honest, they have a pretty solid track record of when they say a guy is struggling in this stuff and everyone says, oh no, don't believe them. They're just negative. But it's been a pretty strong track record historically, so I kind of trust what they say here. We had Zach Pearson, who said it was a mixed day of results for Caleb Williams and the Bears' first team offense. Started good in 11-on-11 drill, which is, Ron, as you said in pre-show, that's what we really care about, right? The 11-on-11.
Yeah, that's 100% what I care about. I don't care so much what happens in other drills, as long as the well, that's what we'd like to see.
Yeah, you froze up a little bit there on me. I don't know if that was just my end or not, but I was having the issues with my camera pre-show, and this episode might be doomed, but we'll see. So start good on the 11-on-11, and that's the stuff that's going to tell you the most about what he's seeing, how he's seeing the field, how he's recognizing the plays. But then in 7-on-7, Zach said he was good for the most part, as it should be. He said in his tweet, and it should be because there's no pass rush, but he did have an interception in that session as Kevin Byard picked him off. And then where some of the issues I think really came in as far as it being an up and down day, the team 2-minute drill was not good. Zach said for the first team offense, they ran 2 drives in 2 minutes, punted both times after 3 and outs, and it included multiple penalties on the offensive line.
Of course it did. Because why wouldn't it? It's the first day. I think that's the one thing too with all of this that I would take into account is this is literally the first time this entire unit is working together as what it is, right? Like, so the first time Caleb's working with any of these, this offensive line, these running backs, we know he's been working kind of on his own with some of the receivers, and that's great, but he hasn't been working with the full slew of receivers either. So there's a chance in that 7-on-7, and I'm not saying that was the case, but maybe it was, with a guy that he didn't have the same level of chemistry with right now, like a DJ Moore or Keenan Allen that he was throwing the ball to. So just little things to keep in mind. But it's day one. I expect it to be sloppy. If it's clean on day one, that is almost, you start to look to the sky and wonder if the sky's falling, because it's very rare to see a clean practice on day one. So again, it's kind of good to hear up and down, because that this gives the coaching staff something that they're going to focus on, that they're going to work on, and it gives them room to improve on that front, while still hearing that, hey, there were some positive takeaways, and he doesn't look totally lost on the football field, practicing with the full roster now.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's a new offense to everyone out there, right? Yeah. Completely new offense, and I think, I look at the offensive line penalties and I think, well, you can't really hold without pads. You can't, you can't really get like hands to the face or something so it's got to be false starts, right?
It's got to be
cadence. Your cadence is part of your scheme. It's a whole new cadence. Like sometimes if a rookie quarterback's coming in, but it's the same OC, the cadence is probably easier to keep the same and to just have from one quarterback to the next. But when it's a new offense like this, I'm sure Shane Waldron has different things that he wants done with the cadence that, is going to set stuff up within the playbook. And that's something that all of these players are getting used to as well. And I think there's just a lot of elements here. To your point, Ron, it's the first day.
Yeah, I want it to be rusty, especially with a new OC. And, it was good hearing about, you and I talked about this a little bit off air, that the defense was flying around today, and they looked to be very much in sync, which is great. They should be, outside of really Kevin Byard. If you look at the team as a whole right now, it's largely the same group coming back from a year ago. So you would expect them to be on the same page with Eberflus's defense. And, there might be a couple new wrinkles, but overall it's largely the same group. There's a lot more to work on the offensive side of the ball because of the change at OC with Waldron coming in. So that's where I would expect the sloppiness to be. And to hear that, it aligns with what we should expect at this point on June 4th.
Now, Ron, the thing I'm really curious about, and I'm setting the line on this. So I'm setting the line at 5.5. Over under 5.5 players that Matt Eberflus told to bring their track shoes in July today.
Ooh. I might take the over.
Okay.
Just take the over just because.
I'm willing. I think I'm with you on that over. I'm betting you just every guy as they walked in the building, don't forget your track shoes. Don't forget your track shoes.
It was just cliche at that point just to get them in. Guess what, guys?
But
Let them know.
training camp, that'll start mid-July. And then by August 1st, we have the Hall of Fame game when we finally get to see Mongo go in the Hall of Fame, which will be like I feel like talking about how Mongo has been getting screwed by the Hall of Fame for like a decade now. Like he belonged in there a long time ago. So I'm excited to see that. And then within a week of that game, August 6th, we get the first episode of Hard Knocks.
Oh, yeah. I think the Hall of Fame game is going to be great. I think it's cool this year, too, because you got two Bears going in, right? You got Mongo, who, like you said, Q, I think he does deserve to be in. You look at the statistics. I mean, he's one of the most dominant defensive tackles ever. I mean, that's just what the numbers say. There's no other way to beat around the bush. But in addition, you have the greatest return man of all time going into the Hall of Fame, and rightfully so as well, as part of that class. So that's going to be really cool, and to see the Bears be a part of the Hall of Fame game. The Bears were in the Hall of Fame game years ago. I remember that. So it'll be kind of cool to see them back in Canton, Ohio. It's been a long time.
Was it 2018?
Maybe it might have been 2018. It's been a couple years, but they were in it.
Yeah, I think it was 2018. It was either 2018
Sounds
or
right.
2019, but I feel like it was 2018.
I think it was 18 because there was a lot more optimism surrounding the Bears than there was in.
And it was before the Mac trade. So like it was like
Yes.
there was optimism, but it wasn't like full on like crazy person optimism like it became, which wasn't so crazy, but like it was like crazy as in like fun and won't stop talking about it type crazy.
Exactly. and then like you said, man, literally less than a week later, we get that first episode of Hard Knocks. And that's what everybody's excited for, because like Nan says down here, so great. They've been ducking for too long. Now we finally get to see an inside look of this organization. And it's true. I mean, the McCaskies are on record very, very openly being like, hey, we don't want cameras in the building. They like keeping everything very close to the vest. That's just how they've operated, probably, dating back to the days that George Halas owned the team. So it's kind of cool that the NFL kind of forced the Bears to be a little more open, especially this year. I mean, there's actually huge optimism. For the first time in your franchise's history, you finally used the number one pick and made a selection there. You got what could be a new franchise quarterback. You had the big trade for Keenan Allen to already add to DJ Moore, and then obviously Odunze, who came later in the draft. Like, there's just so much hype around it that it was a slam dunk for Hard Knocks to want the Bears to be the focal point of this year's iteration of the program. And good on the NFL for finally making the McCaskies kind of loosen up a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% on that. I'm not sure there's a year that I'd rather like, obviously it's hard to pull bias out of that, but I'm not sure there's a year where I would rank the Bears being on Hard Knocks would be more interesting and more entertaining than this season. Like, this is the ultimate, and I'm sure Kevin Warren had something to do with this happening, because think about Kevin Warren, his goal is to be the NFL commissioner.
Yeah,
he wants to be on camera. He wants to be seen. So I'm sure he had influence on it, and I wouldn't doubt if Caleb's camp had some influence on it. It's about building the brand, and that's probably the best option out there to build your brand is Hard Knocks, as we saw with who was it, Eric Kush back in 2017.
Yeah,
selling the tank
Eric Kush. Heck yeah!
So, I got a question for you. I put this out on Twitter. I'll share the results on here after you answer. But which secondary or tertiary Bears storyline do you think will garner the most interest on Hard Knocks?
Oh.
1, we got the crocodile punter.
Naturally.
2, we got Karan Amagaji and all the hometown heroes on this team. You got TJ Edwards, you got Jack Sanborn, Karan Amagaji. There's a UDFA out of Arizona State, Mallory, I believe is his last name.
Yeah.
So that's just a few of them. There's more. So all the hometown guys playing for their hometown team. Number 3, Velus Jones and the kick return rules. And number 4, Matt Eberflus' glow up.
So I've got 2 parts to this answer. What I think it'll be versus what I would like it to be. What I think it'll be Matt Eberflus's blow up. It's really what I think it'll be. What I would like it to be, admittedly, is Velus Jones in the kick return rules, because I think that's the most fascinating change we have coming into this season from an NFL-wide standpoint. So why not highlight the case with a team that has literally been carrying this guy for how many years now because of his ability in the return game, just trying to give him a chance to be a difference maker on the football field. Could this finally be the year that Ryan Poles is made right by keeping Velus Jones Jr. around because of these new kick return rules? I think that was what it should be, because I think that just in general is going to be fascinating to see how that plays out in the preseason and ultimately into the regular season. But I'd be hard pressed to bet against the Eberflus glow up being the real tertiary storyline there.
Coming in first, according to the Twitter poll, which got 100 votes, so not nothing crazy, but Crocodile Punter took first place at 39%.
Okay.
Then the glow up at 32%.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got the Amagaji Hometown Heroes at 20%. And Velus Jones only getting 9% of that.
Tragic. I get it. Like, I think a lot of people, when they thought about the voting of this, thought, well, it's going to be very Chicago focused. But you would be damned to think the NFL, who has full control over this because NFL Films helps put this on, they wouldn't highlight a new rule change that could potentially change football because of the high-level athletes you have in the return game at the highest level. I mean, look what it's done for the UFL with how they've exercised the kick return rules. Just imagine what it's going to do with guys like Cordero Patterson and some of these other really strong return men in the NFL. I think it's going to make for a lot of fun TV on special teams this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm actually running a big counter. If there's one that I would really like to see, it would be the Hometown Hero ones. I think that would be a really cool aspect to play up and to, Karan Amagaji went to Hinsdale Central. I might hate Hinsdale Central because I'm a Glenbard West hitter through and through, but I'd love to see them, him going back into his high school, talking to the kids, being involved with that. And I just think that would be a really cool aspect of someone, who went to high school in the area and grew up around some of these teams that these guys played for. And I think it could be really interesting for a lot of the fan base, which is obviously mostly local to the area, to see their high schools around there, their rivals, or I just think there's a lot of cool stuff with that. But I think that's enough talk about Hard Knocks. We're a little behind on getting to that, but I want to get to the meat of this show, which is Caleb Williams' expectations and trying to set our expectations in a realistic area, because I think it can still be pretty impressive and you can be pretty realistic the more I looked at these numbers. And so on this graphic here, I took the top 10 picks over the last 10 years who played a minimum of 10 games in their rookie year and did their pass yards per game, pass touchdowns per game, interceptions per game, passing plus rushing yards per game, total touchdowns per game, and total turnovers per game. The total turnovers is a little weird because I like to use a weird stat here that I call net fumbles. To me, it's your fumbles minus your fumbles recovered. Because if your teammate recovered it, the defense had just as good a chance of recovering it. So I like to count that as a turnover. But if you recovered it yourself, it could be a bad snap, could be something. So I don't like to knock a guy too much for self-recovered fumbles. But so that total turnovers number is your interceptions plus your net fumbles. And so looking at this, I sorted by pass yards per game. I mean, Justin Herbert and CJ Stroud are kind of in a tier of their own. And then
100%.
Burrow is right behind it. Burrow got crushed by his fumbles in this. He I think it was something like 16 or 18 net fumbles. So he was killed on that. But outside of that, I mean, you got Baker Mayfield, who was solid, but his interceptions were at a higher level than those other three. And then it starts to dwindle down. What type of area do you think we should be looking at for Caleb on this? And we got Scott from Iowa in the comments telling us 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards, which Twitter is telling him. Which
don't let Scott fool you. I think Scott's telling himself that too.
Depends.
Hey,
Do we want to put our super fan hats on or our
yeah, I was
analyst
gonna say,
hats on?
do you want the honest version, or do you want me to dive deep down and get the John R accent out and say the Bears and I say 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards? No, I think a realistic expectation, though, just looking at this list, Q, would be somewhere in between Baker and like Marcus Mariota. And I don't think that's crazy and out of the question by any means, because you do have to factor in Caleb Williams' ability to scramble. I don't think he's going to run nearly as much as Justin Fields did, but I could see him run at like a Mitch Trubisky or just a smidge better level, right? Like I think that's totally plausible. So, I mean, Mariota was good for about 255 yards per game when you incorporated both. Wentz was very similar. Winston was about 265, and Baker, I mean, Baker counted for 311 yards per game is pretty impressive as a rookie. I would be very happy if Caleb fell right around where like Jameis Winston is. Maybe not so much from the interception numbers, obviously. I would like to see those maybe a little down, maybe a 0.6 per game or a 0.5 per game, probably something closer to like Burrow's number. But overall, I think, 265 total yards of offense, averaging over 250 yards of passing per game would be incredible. And I don't think completely out of the question by any stretch of imagination for Caleb in year one.
Yeah, so I'm having a hard time tempering my expectations. I'm gonna be honest.
I don't think you're the only one, because my buddy Pat here, trying not to get too excited. Nan's saying over in terms of by Mayfield, which is what I brought up, right? He's saying over Mayfield. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're the only one, Q, having troubles tempering your expectations.
Because I mean, I look at this and if we start towards the bottom, you look at like Josh Rosen, that Arizona team was pretty much the end of Larry Fitzgerald's career, like the tail end of it, and they didn't have a lot of weapons around him. Josh Allen had almost nothing in Buffalo. Zach Wilson, I believe, was pretty rough. We know Bryce Young last year, the cupboard was empty. Trubisky in 2017, that cupboard was empty too.
Kendall Wright, baby. Kendall Wright, leading receiver that year.
Yeah. Bortles had some good talent with Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson there, but it was nothing out of this world. Lawrence had very little, I feel like.
Yeah. Lawrence's was pretty underwhelming too until they got Christian Kirk.
Yeah. And then Darnold, they gave him they did a good effort for Darnold, I feel like, but it didn't work kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you get to Kyler. Kyler, I think, had some more talent. Fitzgerald was still there. I forget who. AJ Green wasn't there yet. Neither was DeAndre Hopkins. So even his rookie year, it might have been pretty empty. Daniel Jones had a bunch of middle tier guys like Sterling Shepard and like Darius Slayton types. Mariota's O-line was strong, but his weapons were really weak. Really weak. They were very comparable to what Justin Fields had as a rookie. So like it was pretty empty. And then Wentz, even, that team was talented, but their talent was up front on the O-line and at tight end. The receiver room was pretty empty there too. Winston had a lot of talent with Mike Evans on the roster, and like there was Vincent Jackson was there too, I think. So you see Winston had a strong room. You start to get the argument for, well, maybe that compares to what the Bears have with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. Baker, I can't honestly say Baker's room was stronger. Jarvis Landry was their one. Landry is a good player, but I mean, he wasn't anything outrageous. Burrow, you had T. Higgins and AJ Green. So you had some talent there, but AJ Green missed a lot of that year.
Was AJ Green even in there still in 2020?
He was there. I think he missed almost every game.
Okay. I was going to say, because he wasn't much of a factor by any means at that point.
You still had Tyler Boyd as well. So you had a solid guy next to Higgins, but he was a rookie Higgins too.
Yeah, and there was no Jamar Chase yet either in that equation.
And you get to CJ Stroud, and you can look back a year ago and say that I thought the Texans, the only thing holding them back last year was their weapons.
Yeah.
Going into the seasons. Now, between Stroud being better than expected and those guys developing and doing more than expected, it ended up looking like a pretty good room by the end of the year. But I can't say that those weapons are stronger than what Chicago has.
I would agree with that.
Herbert's the argument where he came into the league with Jared. I think Jared Cook was still at tight end there. They
Sounds
had
about
Keenan
right.
Allen. They had Mike Williams. They had prime Austin Eckler. Like, that's the one team where I'm like, okay, that might be more talented than what the Bears have. The rest of these, I don't see a single team here that has more talent than what the Bears have coming into this year, which, like I said, makes it really hard for me to temper those expectations because I'm just like, this guy was number one. This guy, I think, is a stronger prospect than almost every guy on this list. And there's just a lot of things pointing to he should be really good right away, as long as, there isn't idiocy going on within the scheme, which I don't think there will be.
Yeah, and we talked about it pretty heavily, Q, over the course of the off season here on Bears on Tap. Like, this is a very abnormal situation for a number one overall pick. It's very, 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 very rare that a guy walks into a team that has this much talent that was picking number one overall. And again, the only reason they were is because of arguably the trade of the century pulled off by Ryan Poles, moving out of the number one pick a year ago to just get the number one pick again because of the Carolina Panthers. He even said it on the podcast that came out. He had a discussion and he referenced talking about how he talked to Matt Ryan quite a bit because they were teammates at BC. And there's a quote from that he said, he's like, there's times I wake up in the middle of the night and I wonder what if that first trade or what if that trade never happened. He goes, because I wouldn't have known how to get this team into being a winner so quickly. Like, that trade really did potentially altered the course of the franchise. And I don't think that's ridiculous or overstating it by any means. I mean, you went out and got a number one receiver to only add a guy who's been a number one receiver his entire career and coming off his best statistical season of his career to go then add another alpha coming out of the draft who probably would have been the number one receiver in just about any other class in recent years. Oh, and don't forget a guy who just had 700 yards as a tight end, Cole Kmet, and a guy who's had plenty of receiving success in Gerald Everett in his NFL career. That's a lot of weapons to have for a number one overall pick. And that's, again, this is a unique situation that the Bears have on hand. And going back to why we said they were the prime candidate to be on Hard Knocks, because this is such a unique situation overall. So you have hyped me now up, Q, which is bad, because once I get really excited, then it's game over.
Well, and so, like, I'm looking some more at this, even of like, when you're trying to project a guy to average over 250 passing yards a game, right? Like a rookie, you gotta go look at what they did in college, right? Like, you gotta go look, because that's, if the guy couldn't do it in college, he's not gonna do it in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Is a good kind of gauge for it, I think. Yeah. And so we look at Fields from when he became the starter on. It's 22 games, and he averaged. Let me see. I was expecting it to give me an average here, and it's making me actually do the math.
We got to do some real math on a Tuesday afternoon now, Q. Or I guess a Tuesday evening, given that it's.
He averaged 244 yards a game. Pass yards per game across 22 games. 6 of those games, he went over 300 yards. Or, I'm sorry, 7 of those. 7 over 300 yards. So 7 out of 22.
This is coming out of college?
Yeah. Justin Fields coming out of college.
Got it.
So then we can take a look at Mitch Trubisky. In his starts, which was only 13 games. So 33,748 yards. He averaged 288 yards a game. So that's actually a lot stronger. But again, it's a small sample size.
Very small.
And he went over 306 of those 13 games. So almost so Fields was at around a 30% hit rate for 300 yards. Trubisky was just under 50%, but on a small sample size. We go to Caleb, and Caleb went over 300 15 times.
Holy shit.
And he averaged as a starter, let's see, where did he actually start starting? It was the Texas game. I'm going to include the Texas game.
Yeah,
No, I'm not going to, because it was only half a game, and he had 212 yards because he only played the second half.
Still had 212 and only one half of football.
33 total games. So 15 out of 33, just a little below half of his games, but a much larger sample size.
Much larger.
And let's see, 97, 68 total yards.
It's a lot of yards.
So he averaged 296 yards a game across 33 starts. He averaged 296 passing yards a game. Like, that's okay. So I'm sitting here going, so his ceiling as a pro, I think it's fair to say, is 296 passing yards a game, right? That's you can't get better than you were in college. It's very rare that happens. I'm not saying that's going to happen as a rookie either. I'm just I'm trying to plant a flag of what is a reasonable ceiling in his career, right?
That's
and then
fair.
we work
Yeah.
backwards from there.
Sure.
So to me, I mean, that's 296 yards a game is probably not reasonable, but Justin Herbert did 289 a game as a rookie. And Caleb Williams is going to have better weapons than he had in college, which you can't say about Fields necessarily, right?
Sure.
I mean, definitely not, really. When you look at it, you had Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Those were his two main receivers when he was at Ohio State.
And Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, and Garrett Wilson, that's right. Right, yeah, because JSN didn't actually even play that much with Fields. So Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, that's even more lopsided against what the Bears had at their top two receivers in his time in Chicago. Caleb's cast is actually getting better. His best receiver he's played with is Jordan Addison or Marvin Mims. Probably. Unless there's an Oklahoma guy I'm forgetting, which there might be. But either way, I don't think there's anyone who approaches Jordan Addison.
No.
And I think DJ Moore is better than Jordan Addison. I think Keenan Allen's better than Jordan Addison. I think Rome Odunze can be better than Jordan Addison.
I would say that's a fair assessment.
So if he averaged 298 passing yards a game, which again, I'm not expecting for a rookie. I'm just curious what this number would be. It's 5,000 passes. So his ceiling as a pro, absolute ceiling, any given year of his career, I think is about 5,000 passing yards.
So like Scott said earlier, 5,050 touchdowns.
Wait, I'm not being out. Like Peyton Manning did 5,000, right?
Yeah.
Tom Brady, like the great quarterbacks have done 5,000.
Breeze did 5,000 on multiple occasions. Ben Roethlisberger had a 5,000-yard year. It's rare. I mean, there's only I think it's 7 quarterbacks that have had 5,000-yard seasons, and I think only one that's had multiple. And I think that's Drew Brees. But
I mean, if we're talking about it, Caleb has been talked about in this light though of a prospect, like that is his that he is a true blue chip quarterback prospect. And that's what you would hope those guys' ceiling is, right? That's what you expect those guys' ceilings to be, is that type of football player. And that's what the math is hashing out here for me, that, he has the chops to be that type of passer. Now, as a rookie, that can fall in any number of ways. I tend to think expecting over 3,500 yards is foolish for me because I'm just like, I'd be pretty happy with 3,500, so I'm not trying to get too greedy. Again, like Scott Iowa's realistic goal. But I ran some numbers on this based on the averages here. So if you see at the bottom of this, I have the top 5 results. That's the top 5 player in each category, the average of the top 5. And the bottom 5 results, that's the average of the bottom 5 player for each category. And I did some projecting with the bottom, if he's the bottom 5 among this group of players, his stats, across 17 games, looking at just shy of 3,000 passing yards, 12 passing touchdowns, 18 interceptions, 3,400 combined yards, 14 touchdowns, and a whole lot of turnovers, right? That's if he's in the territory of Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, Zach Wilson, Bryce Young, Mitch Trubisky as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the average, if he plays all 17 games, And I projected out for 13 games, 15 games, and 17 games because I felt like that fit a good range of outcomes.
I would say so.
17 games on the average, he's looking at 3,800 yards. A lot of rookie quarterbacks don't play 17 games. I think that's important to remember here.
Right.
But I kind of think Caleb's going to.
Assuming health is there.
Yeah, I mean he's never had injury issues that have been noted. Really, he had a bit of a hamstring issue in a bowl game, I think, but outside of that, he's never missed time during college with an injury. He's never really had anything that's severely limiting him during games. Yeah, knock on wood, absolutely. But I think that he has a real shot to play every game just because I don't see a history of him not.
And there's also no other quarterback here that's the clear-cut veteran while the other guy learns. Like, you have Brett Ripien in there because he knows the system, and you have Tyson Bagent in there because he showed he can run an offense. God forbid something happens to your starter. This is Caleb's quarterback room. Like, this is not Andy Dalton in front of Justin Fields. This is not, Mike Glennon in front of Mitch Trubisky. Like, this is Caleb's room, period.
Yeah. And I don't see a roster that you say, oh, he got dinged up, we're just going to make sure he's healthy before he gets back out there. I see a roster that says, we can protect you. We can give you quicker answers to make sure you're not taking a hit here or there. You just got to do it, right? And I see a quarterback who I don't see a reason why he can't do that to protect himself when he's a little dinged up or something, which I think is a big part of what an injured rookie might sit a little longer for because they don't trust that he can protect himself out there. But so the 17 games on the average, 3,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, a little over 4,000 combined yards, 23 touchdowns, 21 total turnovers. Now, this is where it gets fun because the top 5 guys, and that's who, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, Jameis Winston as rookies, like, because Jameis Winston's rookie numbers were impressive for a rookie.
They were good.
That's the territory that we're thinking for Caleb, right? Like, I think that's what we agreed on, what we both said when we were saying where should Caleb fall in this range. Across 17 games, that's 4,500 yards. 30 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Across 15 games, just over 4,000 yards. Say that he misses a little time at 13 games. That's 3,500 yards, 23 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Like, this is all just based on the averages of these guys and how many games you're expecting Caleb to play.
Yeah.
If you think Caleb is going to fall within the average of Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, and Jameis Winston's rate stats from their rookie year, their yards per game, their touchdowns per game, their interceptions per game, this is the range that we're talking for production.
It's a good range.
Which is, again, where I keep saying I'm having a really hard time tempering my expectations here because this is not stuff that has not been done before.
Right.
It's just stuff that hasn't been done for the Chicago Bears.
Right. And I was going to say, I mean, you look at, the far right side of the chart here, assuming he stays healthy and plays either 15 or 17 games, he is the all-time leading passer in a single season in franchise history with those numbers.
Yeah. I mean, that's not out there to even think about. Like, I'm going to pull up Eric Kramer's numbers just to see, because we all know he owns every single season record pretty much for the Bears as a passer from that infamous 94 season. I think it was 94. No, it was 95.
95. Yeah, I was going to say it was either, for me, my thought was 95 or 96.
3,800 yards, 29 touchdowns, 10 interceptions.
I think
there's a part of me that just thinks Caleb's going to beat that as a rookie because he can and he's going to want to. And who knows, maybe he can. Maybe I'm being, obtuse here, but I don't think it's out of reach for Caleb to beat Eric Kramer's records as a rookie.
I don't think so either. But again, it really. I mean, when was the last time the Bears had a quarterback prospect, like you said, that's been compared to the type of company that he's been compared to at this point? They've never had that. Even with, I know Mitch was a number 2 overall pick, but Mitchell Trubisky wasn't compared to the greats. Justin Fields was the 11th overall pick in his draft, but he wasn't compared to the greats. Like, Caleb's being compared to the greats. He's number 1 overall pick. Like, this very easily could be a record-setting year for him as a rookie, which is partially like, wow, that's an embarrassment about the Bears franchise, but it also is a testament to just how good he can be in his first year in the NFL, because he's had the numbers collegiately to back up what his ceiling can be at the next level.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. And I'm going to pull up my spreadsheet that I made these in, because I want to see what some of the volume stats within there are, because I think the volume stats are I want to see why some of these guys didn't reach these numbers, because the same volume, because some of them didn't, but their rate stats say they should have. And then that'll kind of help us get an idea of what could be the limiting factors here. So let's see. I'm not putting this on the screen share. I've just got it up, but I will talk through it.
Let's do it.
So Justin Herbert, 4,300 yards passing, 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. So he did this. He did what we're saying is possible for Caleb. CJ Stroud, 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And his total touchdowns was 28. Total turnovers were 10. So his yards were there. His touchdown production fell a little short of what we're saying is projectable here for Caleb. But that's realistically, I think it can be realistic to say that's some red zone decision making. That's the difference right there.
Yeah.
When you're talking about a guy who only threw 5 interceptions as a rookie, like I just think they took it out of his hand in the red zone a lot.
Yeah.
Burrow was cut short by injury, only played 10 games, but 2,700 yards passing. If we project that out to 17 games, we're talking about a 4,570 yard season. So Burrow did.
He was balling with like no offensive line either.
Yeah. And then Baker was at 3,700 yards. But he only played 14 games.
Right.
27 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. So again, you see if in 17 games, he's reaching well over 4,000 yards. Jameis Winston on 16 games, 4,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Like, so the range we're talking about as a guy who is the clear-cut starter from day one, I think 4,000 yards is a realistic thing to hope for with this roster, with these receivers. I'm dancing around saying expect because I'm scared of it, but it's realistic to expect that based on the numbers that we're seeing, the roster that we have in front of us, and the caliber of prospect that Caleb is. It's realistic to expect that, I think.
I think it's realistic, though, in the sense of, like, again, you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, it's not like this hasn't been done before. Like,
right.
Rookie quarterbacks have thrown for 4,000 yards. Yes, it's still considered rare, but it's not impossible. And again, because of what, if every analyst that watches film is correct and says, Caleb's one of the best quarterback prospects to come out in the last 10 years, like that does get people excited to hear that, knowing that he has the level of weapons that most rookie quarterbacks don't get. Like it's how do I put this? It's not so much expectation maybe as it is like, hey, you have the opportunity to do this. Like, we know you can do it and you have the weapons to do it. Like, there's just less excuses if you don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, oh, he didn't have the talent. Oh, they couldn't protect him. Oh, they couldn't do this. The defense couldn't stop anybody. So, they're just, not playing well or whatever. It doesn't like it's either, like you said, idiocy in the sense of the scheme or the quarterback himself that keeps him from potentially achieving these, because Poles has given him every toy he could possibly want in his toy box to go out and perform as a rookie.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to talk myself out of this right now. Like I'm actively like thinking of things and looking things up of like why this shouldn't be possible. I just thought, well, what about Geno Smith? What did Geno Smith do his first year starting in Seattle? Which he was a what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
A
7,
true
8,
vet.
a 9-year veteran, but a 9-year veteran who had only started 2 games in the previous 5 years. No, I'm sorry, 5 games in the previous 6 years. So it's also not a guy who was taking live bullets very much.
Right.
First year starting in Seattle, he threw 4,300 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So it's built into the offense. Like that's Shane Waldron's offense.
Yeah.
It's there to be had. And then even 23 with all the issues on their O line with Geno missed 2 games with a shoulder injury. Like I think it was his throwing shoulder actually. He still threw 3,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. On pace across 17 games for 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. So again, it's within this offense. It's built in there if Caleb can handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has the track record. 100%. 100%.
So question for you, Ron. At what level within this chart, like you could say average result across 15 games, or like you can word it however you like, but which level are you disappointed at with Caleb's production to saying that, pretty good health across the year, assuming for the roster?
I think where disappointment sets in is somewhere in that like upper bottom 5, lower average range. Like, and I think it'd be more disappointment on the average side because he only played 13 games. Like, I would just be
Right.
bummed that we didn't get to see more Caleb Williams at that point because you lose him for 4 games potentially. I think not so much the numbers because I think, not playing the full season and still having almost 3,000 yards is still fantastic. I think it would just be more disappointment on the end of like, oh, we didn't get to see him more. But I think from a physical number standpoint, it would just have to be in the bottom 5. I think anywhere else in that equation, if he plays 15 and he's average and he's still over a 3,000 yard quarterback, shit, when was the last time they had a quarterback throw for 3,000 yards? Mitch?
Probably. Shoot.
Like, it's been a long time just in that essence. I mean, even that would be fine to see. But realistically, I think
God, that can't be true. I mean, I think it is, but
I think it is. I think 2018 when Mitch threw for over, and he didn't throw much over 3,000, but I think he had like 3,300 yards. That was probably the most in a single season since 2018 was Mitch.
Ugh.
Because you got to remember they kept playing the quarterback carousel.
2019 he had 3,100. So the Bears have not had a 3,000 yard passer since 2019.
COVID has come and gone as a thing. Not gone, but come as a thing since the last time the Bears had a 3,000. And that was nearly 5 years ago. Like, to put that into perspective here. I mean, it just goes to show. I would be pumped if he played 15 games and had over 3,000 yards, 17 games and has nearly 4,000 yards, or even any of those top 5 equations. I think the only disappointment would be if he's in the bottom 5 territory. And the only way I'd be disappointed with average on the 13 scale end is just because it would be disappointing to see that he misses that much time.
I think I'm with you there. I think I agree with that. It's just if he falls anywhere below the average levels, that's where I start to get worried, I think.
Right.
And I'll be honest, even if he's in the average levels, like he doesn't have to hit top 5, the top 5 rookie quarterback, top 10 pick level of the last decade. But if he falls in the average group, I'm disappointed, I think, because I'm worried. Because I feel like I've seen this before and it was never as good of a roster. So I'm wondering how much the roster carried him there.
Interesting.
So I'm setting the bar high for this kid. I think that's just where I'm at. I'm sorry, Caleb, but I'm setting the bar really high for you here. because I see a lot of reasons why you should succeed in this, and I believe in you. So I'm sorry for believing in you.
I'm sorry for caring and having a sense of belief.
I feel so conflicted right now because I don't let myself think about Bears quarterbacks like this.
I don't think anybody's thought about Bears quarterbacks like this. I think all of us are in new territory, Q. It's not just you.
Yeah. But do you have any more thoughts on this, Ron, and what we're looking at from Caleb? Because I think I'm about out of thoughts, and my brain is turning into stew as I'm thinking about a 4,000-yard Chicago Bears passer combined with a rookie quarterback, and I'm just like, this doesn't make sense. I'm grinding my teeth. This doesn't work.
I am just excited for football. I mean, that's really where it is right now. Like, I don't want to sit here and wish away summer by any means. It's one of the most beautiful times of the year, especially in, for people like myself in Chicago. But man, that when those boys report in the middle of July for training camp, like, hype is going to be at an all-time high. And people are going to be chomping at the bit to watch this Bears team and see them perform. And I cannot wait. I am so freaking excited. I already know where I'll be for the first game, and I'm just like mentally picturing what that's going to feel like. And I mean, if he comes out and against the middle of the road Tennessee Titans team in week 1 at Soldier Field and balls out and they win, the city might burn to the ground in excitement.
Our prediction time. Switching your hats too. Are the Cubs going to be in the playoff race in September?
Ugh, I don't know. Don't ask me that question right now. Maybe. I don't know. Perhaps. It's a tough question to answer right now.
I have some purpose in this because do you remember September 2018 and 2019 and how electric everything was around Chicago sports? Because
the
Cubs were playoff team.
Yeah,
and the Bears
really good.
had high expectations, and it was just like September is so fun when there's good baseball and good football in Chicago. And October, if you get there, like it's just 100%. It's electric.
100%. I think too, you incorporate the possibility of the Blackhawks having a better season. Like, everybody's already on the Connor Bedard hype train. You add in if they have a really strong offseason here, because their offseason, it's coming. It happens in the next handful of weeks here is really the heart of NHL offseason. Still got to give out a Stanley Cup. That hasn't been done just yet. Or I shouldn't say a Stanley Cup, the Stanley Cup. It's not like the Lombardi Trophy where they make a new one every year.
It's incredible that thing's not more dented up.
It really is. It's truly impressive. But it could be an incredible October around here because, I mean, it's funny, right? Well, I'll put my baseball hat on really quick here. The Cubs are 2 games below 500, but they're only half a game out of a wild card spot right now. Like, they're very much still in the playoff hunt, and they've been playing really bad baseball the last few weeks. If they turn it around and are in the hunt in September, right? Because you're still battling for the playoffs at that point in September. The Bears are humming in their first 5 games of the season. 4 games of the season, I guess, because they start the first full weekend of September. It's going to be nuts, man. It's going to be nuts. And then if the hype is there around the Hawks too, and you go into October and maybe the Cubs are a playoff team, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's those times where it's those Octobers where there's not a dull day. Every day is sunny. Everything is beautiful. Everything is fun. The sports talk radio is all on good vibes. People aren't arguing with each other about sports. They're arguing about how good the team is going to be. Like, everything just hits perfectly when all that's in unison. And I hope we get to see it again soon.
I do too. It's been a long time. And I think it's due. It's due for those that suffer through the turmoil that is Chicago sports on a yearly basis.
All right, Ron. Well, what do you say we get out of here? Everybody make sure to go check out. I'll have these charts and tables. So if you are listening, I'll have them available over at ontapsportsnet.com. And my next article probably coming out Thursday or Friday. So make sure to go check that out, as well as all your Cubs, White Sox, Bulls, Blackhawks, golf, college football, anything and everything basically over at ontapsportsnet.com. Make sure to check out all our associated podcasts as well. You can catch Ron at Cubs on Tap almost every single day. But Ron, why don't we get out of here the only way we know how?
Bear down, baby.
Bear down.